it's happening in New York, New Jersey, or Long Island. Hear about it with Joe Piscopo. Mornings, 6 to 10 on AM 970. The Answer.
Hold on. I got to put it on the speakerphone. Arthur, this is your mom. Here, listen.
Hi, Joe. You don't have to get right back to me. But anyway, this is Arthur Aidala's mother, Marianne. And, of course, I'm disappointed that I can't be with you tonight.
On the
but
cruise.
I want you to make one promise. When you get by that Statue of Liberty, you still have to make that sign of the cross. Because that's what happened with my grandparents when they came here and they saw it. And my grandmother always, that was like their symbol of liberty. And my kids do it, we all do it. And I had the rosary beads, I had the holy water, and I had a St. Anthony's pillow for you.
Oh.
So hopefully we'll see you again.
Oh.
Arthur has something tonight. I don't know, because he's got something every night. But I really missed not being there. I know I would have had a barrel of fun. But when you get there, you got to you got to just do it for your family and all the families and peace in the world. Love you, Joe. You're the best.
Oh, thank you, Marion. Love you, too. You're the best, too. You know, that's a beautiful message. And Marion, I apologize, Marion, for not calling you back, but I've been so busy. I saw that Arthur was coming in, and welcome, Arthur. That is so beautiful. You know, the fact is, when we went past the Statue of Liberty, and we were doing the schmooze cruise, and we're on the boat, and me and Alan Frank and Arthur are up there. Arthur he goes, Joe, I got to make the sign of the cross. He makes the sign of the cross. See, but it is because they were so glad and happy to come into this country.
First of all, they were happy to be
beautiful.
They were happy to be alive,
yeah,
right? I mean, people died on those ships, for real, right? I mean, it wasn't like the Queen Mary 2 now that people sail on. And they were
JFK
leaving.
Or flying into JFK,
right.
Yeah.
And they were leaving a horrible place. I think of both sides of my grandparents, there were a lot of kids on both sides. I think the only ones who went back to Sicily with my grandparents, only because my father bought them tickets. But I can remember my Aunt Grace, my grandmother's mom, and my grandmother's oldest sister, who remembered Sicily well. When my father said, "Are you going to go back?" She said, "Why would I want to go back there?"
Yeah.
It was horrible. We were starving.
Abject poverty.
Why would I want to go back to that dump that we risked everything to leave?
Prato la Sera in Avellino. I go there, and I'm walking around and go, this is nice. I could live here. And then I look at where they were brought up, and I'm saying, this was nice. We have no idea what it was like.
The struggle that they had is absolutely ridiculous.
So give your mom a big hug.
I will give my mom a big
beautiful.
hug. And since we're on nice topics, I just want a shout out. I don't know if you guys go to sleep too early, but on the Emmy Awards last night.
Yeah, what happened?
A good friend of mine's brother, really good friend of mine, Mike Weiss. His brother was Glenn Weiss, who proposed.
Yeah, I heard.
I was just at the funeral.
That was your friend's brother?
Yeah, their mom died 2 weeks ago. I was at the funeral, the wake, the whole nine yards.
Who is Weiss? What's he do?
He directed the Oscars. He directed the Emmys.
Wow.
He directed all of the award shows. So he won the Emmy, and he had his mom's ring. His parents were married 67 years.
Wow.
Joe, I don't know if you had a marriage that lasted 67 months. Have you? Have you had a marriage that lasted 67 months?
Kimberly,
that's over 5 years.
It was 9 years. 17 years together.
All right.
With Kimberly, 15 with the first one.
Okay, all right.
Not bad, right? I'm working on it.
No, that's good. So that was a nice moment, but and that's all over the newspaper today, the engagement. But the other stuff,
very nice.
I heard you say that you were a dork in high school and la 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 la. I don't care who you are, Joe. People dig back deep enough in your history, in anyone's, I don't mean you specifically, in any of our histories, there's gonna be a mess up. There is that. Nobody is so perfect.
But is it?
And there's two. Well, let me just make two legal points. Okay. In the law, there are two things that protect young people, especially. One is called a statute of limitations, because an accusation needs to be brought in a reasonable amount of time for someone to defend themselves, to someone to have a memory of, no, I wasn't there that night. I was actually home with the flu, or I was actually visiting my Aunt Nellie. So there's a reason why there's a statute of limitations on every single crime except homicide. The second thing is, in the state of New York, there's something called youthful offender treatment. That means anyone charged with a crime, any crime. So I mean straight up violent rape. If you're 19 years old or younger, you are eligible. It's a judge's decision for youthful offender treatment. What does that mean? It means as a society, our legislature that we've elected has decided to put a law on the books that says if someone 15, 16, 17, 18, or 19 years old commits a horrendous crime, because of it being considered a youthful indiscretion, it should not hamper them the rest of their lives. And even if they plead guilty, even if they go to jail, youthful offender treatment means they do not have a criminal record. It means they could vote. It means they could run for office. It means they could do all kinds of things, because we've acknowledged young people do stupid things. And this thing with Kavanaugh, if we're going to sideline or really eliminate him from being on the United States Supreme Court, somebody with these qualifications, I don't know him personally. I'm not like a huge fan of his in any way, shape, or form, but I do know his resume. I am a lawyer. I mean, you cannot argue with this man's path to the United States Supreme Court. Yeah. If we're going to derail him for some 1-minute episode in high school, I mean, maybe. No, if. Yeah. Maybe it happened. Correct. And it's just it's very troubling. And what it's doing, Joe, is it's eliminating good people like me and you from going into public service, because you just played that tape of my mother. If I ran for public office right now and they went back to what I did in high school, my mother would be destroyed. I mean, they would, did he do this? Did he do that? Did he cut out of school? Did he steal his father's car? Did he get caught? I mean, did he light an M80 and throw it in the middle of a parade and knock out a whole bunch of people? Yeah. But you know what happened? My father caught me, took off his belt, whipped my butt, and I learned a tremendous lesson, and we move on.
But it just seems to be aggression toward women. Aggression. If you're aggressive toward women, and that's where they seem to be. And so it wasn't just like a date, and he did. It's always he was.
But he's 17, Joe.
Was he 17 when it happened?
Not 19.
He's
17 years old.
15, I think.
No. If he's 15,
she was 15. He was 17.
Right.
Tell me again. What was that, Frankie?
She was 15. He was 17.
Yeah.
I mean, Joe, come on.
Yeah.
I mean, come on. You're telling me something, the 35 years that he's put into on this planet since then, all the wonderful things that he's done, doesn't show more of who he is as a person, who his morals are, what his values are, what his integrity is, more than a 1-minute episode when his hormones were raging at 17 years old.
If it happened at all.
If it happened. Yeah. I'm looking at it in the light most favorable to the woman.
Yeah.
Even if it did happen, these senators are, well, if it happened, my vote is no. Are you nuts? What about it? Okay, let's look at David Souter. After 2 failed Supreme Court nominees, I believe it was Kimber Wood and the gentleman who lied about smoking marijuana, Kimber Wood, because she didn't pay her housekeeper, her social.
Yeah.
So what they do, they found David Souter, who had no history, no background, no record, and he went right through and he burned George H.W. Bush because he turned out to be much more on the left-leaning side than the right-leaning side. Yeah. But because he was a non-entity, there was nothing to attack him on. If this is the route we're going to go, Americans are going to suffer. And I heard you mention, Frank, about Michael Bloomberg running. I mean, that would be spectacular. The problem is he can never win the Democratic primary. You know why? I was thinking about it this morning when I was listening to you guys. We should change the primary system. No, it's our fault because we don't go out and vote. 25% of registered voters vote. That's 25% of registered voters, and not everybody's registered. So basically you have like 12 to 15% of the society who's electing the leader. So who do we blame? We blame the citizens for not going out and voting, because I think Michael Bloomberg would be a spectacular chief executive of the United States of America. But it'll never happen.
Arthur, what would you be asking this woman if you were Kavanaugh's lawyer?
Where you been?
Yeah.
Where have you been? Where were you when he was where were you the first time he became a judge? Where were you when he was working in the White House? Where have you been?
Yeah.
What happened?
And if you're a senator cross-examining her, because she is going to appear Monday. Look,
it's going to you must-see TV. I mean, that's going to be fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I would just say, why now? You don't think a judge sitting on the Court of Appeals is almost equally important, because they deal with a much bigger caseload, so they're affecting many more people's lives. Where have you been? Where were you that night? Where'd you go? How come you didn't go to the principal the next day? How come you didn't go report it in the school the next day? Why?
Yeah.
And then details. What were you wearing? Where were you? what time, who, what, where,
don't you have to be more careful because it's going to seem, if you ask those questions, they're going to say then you're attacking the woman. And
that's what you do. I mean, we're so out of control. If you're going to make this accusation, you bet your butt you're going to be cross-examined vigorously and forcefully, and you better be telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, because not only are you trying to ruin this man's life, but you're trying to affect the whole United States of America.
Our mutual friend, Judge Napolitano, said on Fox News, and I thought it was very interesting. He said, you can't attack her, this Ford, Dr. Ford, the way they attacked Juanita Hill. Is that true, Arthur? Do you agree with the judge in that regard?
Listen, the judge is the judge, and I'm the advocate. And they're two very different roles, right? He's got to be Mr. Politically correct, Mr. Cautious. I have to be a pit bull for my client. I have to do everything I possibly can to make sure if someone's lying about him that those lies are exposed. And if it makes me,
she was embarrassed, but I was embarrassed.
Me look like an ass.
Counselor, I was embarrassed. I didn't want to talk about it. I just wanted to
You didn't want to talk about it for 35 years?
Yeah.
35 years? I mean, ma'am, do you understand with the accusations you're making? Do you understand the changes it's going to be? I mean, believe me, I would be very, 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 very well prepared. And then the senators who said, I don't know if I'm going to willing to vote for him. If I'm a Republican who wants Kavanaugh in, I'm going to say, Jeff Flake, before you decide your vote, we'll start an investigation into your high school background, and then maybe we'll see what gets exposed, what you did when you were a kid.
We have a phone. Judge Kavanaugh's on the phone for Arthur saying, would you represent him?
I mean, this is out of control. And as I'm saying, Joe, I don't have a horse in this race. It's not like I'm Kavanaugh's, buddy. He's not my Justice Scalia or Justice Alito.
What is your prediction, Arthur Aidala, with your brilliant legal mind, man? How do you think this plays out? I think Kavanaugh goes through. I think there's something that's going to come up because he's too smart. He's too smart not to just let this happen. This would have come out before. If
I had to bet $20, I'm betting with you. I'm betting that it's going to get through. However, I think Frank said it earlier. It's really going to depend on their performance, right? If she comes up and she's this glowingly credible person, and the senators don't have the coolions to really go after her and attack her and attack her credibility, not her person, but her credibility and the facts. And poor Kavanaugh is so scared because I don't think he's ever been in this position before. He coaches a little girl's basketball team.
And we hear, and this is what I hear, just hearsay, so not fact. I'm saying Dr. Ford, I hear she's a little wacky. I heard her students come out and say she's really wacky, and she's just really not that
7
stable.
FBI checks, I believe. Kellyanne Conway said he went through 7. Really. Those aren't that's not like, hey, Joe, have you ever been in trouble? No. Okay, we check off the box.
Arthur, you're welcome to hang with us, and thank you, Arthur. That was brilliant. A brilliant take. The great Arthur Aidala right there. 877-970-2999. Please. Piscopo Radio. We are on YouTube and on Facebook. And before I forget, Matt Sambolin, thank you. Big George, thank you. Doing such a great job. Directing, and Emily's here doing a great job. Matt Conklin he is just cracking us up with his memes. Conklin, as I said, Conklin. What did I say, Conklin? You deal with like you Mr. Broadcaster. I'm going to correct you as you go along.
You want to start correcting everything else?
No, I want to get. Believe me, I stumble and fumble all the time. I'm just saying he did such a great job with the meme today. Let's get his name.
Conklin. Right, I said that, and I said Matt Conklin, who's going to be working somewhere else because we don't pay our interns.
That's correct.
Right out loud.
That's correct.
So Matt, great job, So we're talking about Judge Kavanaugh. Now, we got the great Arthur Aidala stayed with us. He stayed with. Look at the meme. Look at this, Arthur.
I did all kinds of homework inside. That's
the green eyes are intense.
Just so my mother calls me before. Obviously, she was very happy. She's like, "What's a meme?"
Yeah.
Basically, it's a photograph for those who are not on Facebook. It's a photograph of
social media.
Joe's face superimposed on that of a priest's body. Just picture like Father Sorgi, but
it's
instead
really
of
what
his
I wear
face,
it's
Piscopo's face, holding out a cross, and behind him
holding a Bible,
and behind him is a huge picture of Al Gattulo.
Scary Al.
Yeah, who looks like he's the devil, more or less. Possessed, yes.
The power of Christ. The power of Christ.
And Joe is trying to clean him up. So this is
Necronomicon.
This is where we have devolved.
You said Comic-Con?
No, Necronomicon. You're an Evil Dead fan. You'd get the rest.
And then he gets a shirt. Arthur, he gets a shirt. Tell Arthur what
it's coming in the mail today from Amazon.
And what's the shirt saying?
It has a big rainbow on it, bright rainbow, and it says Satan loves you.
No, you know what I'm saying? What?
Satan
with this
loves
guy?
me. I love it.
Come on.
Yeah.
What? See? See?
I'm
Are
not,
you gonna wear
know.
that around with your kid? With your kid looking at
Absolutely.
that? No,
Are you
come
kidding
on.
me?
That's
Albert,
not how I roll.
before we go to the legal mind of Arthur Aidala, tell us why, because you're every man, 928 with Piscopo in the morning. You don't believe the accuser of Judge
No,
Kavanaugh.
I don't.
What-
For the simple fact that this is something that happened 30-something years ago. You're remembering it in a room. If this was so critical, if this was so important to you, why didn't you come out at the beginning when all of this
that's
happened?
what Frankie was
and
saying,
the other
yeah,
thing
yeah.
is, we have not heard a scintilla of bad stuff about this guy, about Kavanaugh, in the entire proceedings. The worst thing that we've heard about him, he had credit card debt because he bought Nationals season tickets. The guy's a baseball fan.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
So,
Come
but
on.
now I think Arthur, that Al speaks for a lot of people that way. You just,
Oh, my gosh.
It's something very suspect in this whole thing.
Absolutely. And I received a lot of text messages since I've been on the air with you earlier today about how
We got a
right
call.
we
We got a
all
call
are.
from Sue, who loves you.
Yeah,
Sends her best.
So, again, let's look at it in the light most favorable to her. Al, let's just say it happened. Let's say it happened.
Okay.
Right? He pushed her down and he aggressively tried to kiss her or grab her butt or wherever it was, right? No one's saying he exposed himself. No one's saying he ripped her clothes off or anything like that.
And no rape occurred.
So,
Yeah.
nothing even close to that, right? Since then, right, he's graduated top of his class in high school, Yale undergraduate, Yale Law School. He was the editor or the notes editor of the Law Review. He clerked on the United States Supreme Court. He worked in the White House. He's been a judge who deals with these types of cases. He's been married. He coaches the girls' basketball team. He has lived an exemplary life. He really has. So if I'm a senator and I have to vote, who should be the person making these decisions? Am I going to disqualify him for a 60-second act that may have happened before the Yale Law School, the Yale undergraduate, the notes review, the Supreme
Getting
Court?
a security clearance at the White House.
Over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Oh, and I remember, Joe, I was in the hills of Siena with Justice Scalia when the Anita Hill, Clarence Thomas stuff was going on.
Right.
And I will tell you, Justice Scalia he's a regular guy, a guy's guy, but he wasn't one for cursing. He didn't. I mean, I'm not saying he never cursed, but that wasn't his thing. That was not in his regular
Vocabulary.
He was a good practicing Catholic.
The only time I heard him really go off was describing the media and the Clarence Thomas hearings. And I mean, he used some very choice language. And basically, because he knew Clarence not very, very well, I don't believe at that time, but he knew him well enough, and he's like, this is an honorable man, and it's a witch hunt, and it's all this stuff. I mean, come on, a pubic hair on a
But what he
can
did,
of
but
soda.
what Clarence Thomas did, that working with Anita Hill is worse than what.
Yeah,
what
because he was
Kavanaugh
much
alleged to have done.
He's much older. I mean, he's an
Totally
adult.
Tell
It's
me
in a
again,
work environment.
Let me revisit this 931 with Arthur Aidala. We asked Arthur to come back because he really broke this down, and this was riveting to me. And again, I go to our mutual dear friend, Judge Napolitano on Fox last night, where he said it's back with Miss Hill back then. You could have been harsher. Arnold Specter, Senator Specter, could have been harsher at the time. Can you be as harsh? I asked you this before, and your response was just and fair. Can you be that rough on Doctor?
It depends on your so I'm an elected senator, right? I want to be reelected, right? That's what these guys are thinking first and foremost, right? And I think it depends on their constituency. So not that he would ever do that, but hypothetically, if Al D'Amato, who was the Republican from New York, if he was in there, he would have to go a lot more. He would have to be a lot more gentle because the New Yorkers are, they're the little more, I don't know, marshmallowy. Whereas somebody in a very conservative town or it's a state who thinks that this is absolute garbage, I think that person would be applauded.
Go right after Dr. Ford like that? Yeah.
I mean, you look, these senators have, those 5 people sitting behind them, each and every one of them. Some of them are attorneys. You have to have them spend this whole weekend preparing the cross-examination. Unfortunately for Kavanaugh, you're going to have 5 lawyers who are working for the Democratic senators preparing the cross-examination for Kavanaugh. And the problem is, Joe, how do you defend yourself against something either that never happened or that you don't ever remember happening, and that so far, I mean, so much life has happened for Kavanaugh between then and now. Again, that's why under the law there are statute of limitations, because people have the right to due process. They have a right to defend themselves. Les Moonves, the woman who's accusing Les Moonves of sexual harassment, is 82 years old. 82. She's 82 now. This is something that happened 30 some odd years ago. How is he supposed to say, well, no, that didn't happen? I was actually working on the Mike Douglas show at the time, and it couldn't have happened. Or is it that someone's 82 years old, they look at their life in retrospect, wow, I never made it, I never became a big star. Les Moonves could have made me a big star, but he didn't. Maybe it was because we went on a date and things didn't go so well, and now I'm going to say it at 82 and have my moment in the sun. I mean, we are so out of control in terms of due process. The United States of America, it's all over the Constitution. You know, they were nailing Kavanaugh. In the United States Constitution, is there anything about abortion? Is there anything about abortion? And he was hedging. The obvious answer is no. There's no, the word abortion or anything close to it is not in the Constitution. You know what it is? Due process. No one should be deprived of life, liberty, or property without the due process of law. We have gone away with due process. All someone has to do is make an accusation, and that's fact. That's it. It's fact. It's over. The poor defendant has no opportunity to represent themselves. You're almost better being charged with a crime, because then you could go in court and you can make your case. Whereas the court of public opinion, it's only one side of the story.
Will they ask Kavanaugh to take a lie detector test?
I don't think they can, because those are not admitted in court. Now, they asked Dr. Ford, and apparently she did, and she passed. The other thing, and I was thinking what Al was saying, apparently her and her husband were going to marriage counseling,
therapy,
and she brought it up, and then he's, he's
the
verified.
The name Kavanaugh is not on any record.
No, it's a socially, someone in the Washington, D.C.
But if you think about it, if you're a therapist, I mean, would you write down the name Brett Kavanaugh 6 years ago? How would you know that was going to be anybody that would one day be something you'd have to remember? To me, there are four aspects of this, right? If we have to see, we collectively as a society, is this woman being honest, right? Is she intentionally trying to make an effort to be sincere? I do think she is, not only because of the fact that she passed the polygraph test, but because of the manner in which it sounds like this came out. I do think she's being sincere. The second big question is her memory accurate? This is where I have really serious questions. You want to tell me this is the one name she remembers from 35 years ago, and the other guy that was in the room, who we can tell has no interest in protecting Judge Kavanaugh, he doesn't remember it either, and no one that Judge Kavanaugh, as far as we know, has ever interacted with, has ever had a similarly negative interaction. I really question this woman's memory. Then the third aspect, which Al and you and Arthur all alluded to, is if she wrote this letter to her Congress member in July, if Senator Feinstein knew this in July, why is this now only coming out in September? Why did the Democrats withhold this information
it's obvious,
intentionally until September? And then lastly, to what Arthur kind of began with, is if all this is true, if her memory is accurate and she's being honest, is this enough to torpedo his nomination? And on that one, I don't know the answer to.
And if there's reasonable doubt, my father always told me as an attorney, Arthur Aidala,
I know. I heard
there's
you say
reasonable doubt.
You heard that yesterday. Well, reasonable doubt is the standard for a criminal case in a courtroom. We're not in a criminal case. We're not in a courtroom. So in this forum, there is no instruction given to the senators or to anyone. It's got to be beyond a reasonable doubt, because obviously in this case, Joe, there's plenty of reasonable doubt. And to show you why, even if this took place, it doesn't disqualify him. I represented a guy, Joe, who had already been convicted of murder, right? I had nothing to do with it. He admitted it. Served, I think, 18 years in jail. While he was in jail, he got his high school diploma, got his college diploma, came out of jail, went to law school, and the Supreme Court, the appellate division, gave him his law license, because they said you did something at 18 years old, you killed somebody, you did all of this jail time. You know who wrote the letter for him that he should get his law license? The judge at the trial. He said he did his crime, he did his time, it was a one-time thing, he was addicted to drugs at the time, he's been sober for 20 years, let him be a lawyer. This guy, Kavanaugh, has done unbelievably more successful things, important things.
Yeah.
He's got a huge brain.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line of who you want on the United States Supreme Court. It's very cerebral work. I saw Justice Alito right before the end of the term. You know what he said? I said, where are you going this summer? Because they always go, all the justices go away somewhere. He goes, I'm going nowhere this year. He goes, I'm tired. He goes, I just want to sit on the beach. I don't want to read anything. I want to listen to music. I want to listen to a couple of Phillies. I want to listen to a Phillies games on the radio. Watch the beat. Watch the waves come in. Because it's heavy lifting, this United States Supreme Court stuff. It's not for the weak of heart.
Arthur, well done. That's an old suit, man.
Yeah,
because
you heard me say rain. In Rome. There was a place right by the beautiful suit. There's a place right by the Vatican.
Arthur said he went to the back of the closet because it was rainy, so he got an older suit. That's a really nice older suit.
Right by the Vatican, there's a place called Areti Pisani. Right, I'll tell you right now. The suits there for me are expensive. They're like $400 to $500. The same exact store with the same exact suits are here on Fifth Avenue.
Yeah.
The cheapest one in the whole store. I think it's like $1,800. I'm like, it's the same suit. Ma questo è lo stesso abito che ho comprato a Roma. Ma perché un altro $1,000? I told him, the airfare is, you're not paying for the airfare for each suit.
Yeah, it's so true. Arthur, thank you.
I love staying
Thanks
here.
for your expertise.
And listen, Monday is going to be must-watch TV.
All right.
I mean, I'd like to see what the ratings there are going to be better than Monday Night Football.
Yeah, it's so true. Arthur Aidala right there, the legal mind from Brooklyn, New York. Piscopo in the morning.
Everybody knows this guy. Now, everybody knows he can do a radio show. Joe Piscopo. Mornings, 6 to 10 on AM 970. The Answer.